What's up, yo? Andy McCabe here. I want to talk about something. Going to make sure my system working on. Hey, so I got in my inbox today a very disturbing email. It was from Verisk. It was a report on the current state of artificial intelligence being used to investigate and find fraud. Fraud. So, how many of you out there believe that fraud in the property damage insurance repair space is a problem? How many? I advocate that insurance fraud in property damage space is so small. The overall risk or exposure of fraud in the space that we occupy is so small that it is unmeasurable. Yet we have states like Florida pushing forward anti-consumer, anti-insured legislation under the auspices of we have to protect against fraud. We have to protect against this social inflation. I think that's the word they use. And this report from Verisk just plays right into that. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to read what I saw this morning, and then I'll give you my perspective on it. But at the end of the day, we have to say something. We as an industry have to say something. We as an industry have to take, yes, another stance. We have to take another position. We have to form a position statement or whatever it takes. And, in lack of a better anything else, I think the RIA needs to pick up this torch and start clapping back at this falsehood that insurance fraud is so rampant that state legislators have to do something about it. But when you dig down into their statements and their backup facts, they're not real. They're ephemeral. They don't exist. They're made up on the spot. So I'm just going to read you what I read this morning. It really got my blood boiling. And then we can do the discussion, whatever in the chat or whatever else. So let's do this. Maybe. Come on. There we go. Okay, here's the latest white paper from Verisk, Critical Elements of Anti-Fraud Innovation. Here's the third page, the fraud problem. There is no freaking problem with fraud in the property damage insurance space. There is fraud in auto, right? We all know that. And guess what? The FBI is all over it. The FBI knows these things. The FBI are sending people to prison for these things. But even then, it's not as big as they want to say it is. Here it is. Americans may be, okay, they're going to use all this wishy-washy language in here to try to back up their point with pseudo facts. Americans may be showing an increased tolerance for fraud in recent years. Fewer people believe it's unethical to misrepresent a claim to obtain payment for an uncovered loss than 20 years ago. 88% compared to 93%. And I didn't go to that little, you see the little one there? It says it's referencing whatever report that was. One was Consumer Attitude Study by the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud. Who heads that coalition? Who created that coalition? Let's look at the motivations behind the person or entity creating these reports. What you're about to see here is a whole load of red herring bullshit. And we just can't be silent on this. Okay, here we go. 84% of people think it's unethical to submit an inflated claim, down from 91% in 1997. whatever coalition of against insurance fraud, how many major carriers are on your board, right? Who pays your salary? But that's not the one I want to look at. The one I want to look at is this shift may explain some of the reasons we continue to see increased fraud. Organized fraud schemes continue to rise, and opportunistic fraud spiked during the pandemic. Oh, scary language. Scary. Fraud costs insurers $40 billion a year. 40 billion, huh? All right. Well, that little number 2 there, right? Number 2 leads us to background on insurance fraud from the Insurance Information Institute. Who's on that board? How many major carriers created that one? Well, let's follow that link, shall we? Let me move this down so it's out of my way. Here we go. Here we go. This is the what is this? The Insurance Information Institute, affiliated with the Institute. You know, I swear to God, the insurance carriers, the insurance industry makes up more fake institutes than the property guys do. And we've got a ton of them, right? This isn't an institute. This is just a mouthpiece so to spew disinformation. But let's go down to the cost, all right? So here we have one white paper quoting a website article, and this website article is quoting something else, but let's dig down to it. Insurance fraud costs U.S. consumers at least $80 billion every year, according to the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud. Wait a minute, didn't we just see them? So are they quoting themselves? The FBI reports that non-health insurance portion of the overall problem amounts to 40 billion annually. So there's the number they pulled. They pulled this number, 40 billion. Non-health insurance portion of the overall problem. There is no problem. This is a manufactured crisis. Politicians and insurance companies are taking advantage of this manufactured crisis in order to push insurance company-friendly legislation and increase rates. They want to say, there's so much fraud, we have to increase our rates. And by the way, it's costing you, the insurance public, $400 to $700 more per year in premiums. Oh my God, we got to do something. No, we don't. We have to say something. So let's see what the FBI says about that. Let's come over to whatever they're quoting here. Here's the costs of fraud. There's their 40 billion. Boom. There's the number. They pulled it out of the hat. There's the 40 billion. FBI said it, so it must be true. But let's dig a little deeper. What's the common insurance fraud schemes? Premium diversion is the embezzlement of insurance premiums. Insurance agents taking premiums and not actually buying policies with it. It is the most common type of insurance fraud. 40 billion a year. Most common fraud is on the agency side. It's not the consumer side. It's not the contractor side. Agents are causing the majority of the 40 billion a year in fraud that these insurers who hire the agents to sell their products are saying, well, we've got to do something about it. We've got to increase our rates. We've got to pass legislation. What's the second most common insurance fraud scheme? Fee churning. Once again, it's on the agency side. Agents pushing policies through middlemen to get commission. What's the third? Oh, asset diversion. Asset diversion is the theft of insurance company assets. It occurs almost exclusively in the context of an acquisition or merger of an existing insurance company. Huh. Well, FBI, thank you for that thorough analysis. Oh, and the fourth, workers' compensation fraud. Okay, and then down, fifth line here, massive storm, massive costs. Hurricane Katrina. The storm caused approximately $100 billion in economic damages. I think it was more than that. Approximately 1.6 million insurance claims were filed, totaling 34.4 billion in insured losses. I think it was more than that. Of the 80 billion in government funding appropriated for reconstruction, it is estimated that insurance fraud may have accounted for as much as 6 billion. Estimated may 6 billion. So you dig down and this $40 billion problem becomes 6 billion, and the FBI doesn't even have, I can't even see where they got that number, that number, you know? And I think my gut tells me they just did one of these. Yeah, probably, maybe. What I want to know, how many people went to jail for fraud for Hurricane Katrina related claims? That's the number. How many people were investigated for fraud for Hurricane Katrina related insurance claims? That's the number. That's what we got to talk about. So, yeah, I'm angry. I'm seeing DeSantis pass this bullshit legislation in Florida that is blatantly anti-consumer. Blatantly anti-consumer legislation is going through under the auspices of there's so much consumer fraud happening. We've got to do something about it. And by the way, we've got to raise our rates. And this rate raising argument is not just a Florida thing. It's across the country. There is no good reason insurance companies should be raising their rates in a time where they have record-setting profits. Record-setting profits. Like insane billions of dollars in profit in one of the most catastrophe-filled years. Insurance companies are making more money than ever. They do not need to raise their rates. What they need to do is start paying freaking claims. Start treating their insureds like customers and clients instead of dollar signs, instead of a meal ticket. So what's our answer? Our answer is not to acquiesce. Our answer is not to stay silent on this subject, right? Our answer is to come together and say, this is not a real problem. Fraud is not a problem. Fraud's not a problem in my backyard or their backyard. I'm not seeing fraud. I'm not hearing about fraud. Your anecdotal stories maybe, might, could, they don't hold any weight with me. And the problem we have right now is they have the ear of the consuming public. The public only hears their side because we're not saying anything. So here's my challenge. RIA, IICRC, I don't care who else, big names, Blue Sky, Belfour, say something. Say something. And if you're not saying something, either you're asleep at the wheel or you're making too much money to care. Both are problems in my book. So what are you going to do? I don't have the answer. I never do. I have the microphone. I don't have the answer. But I can see the problem. And I hope now you can too. Let's talk about it in the comments. Happy Tuesday, y'all. We'll see you.